So this would be Monday, March 2nd, as we continue with our Greek mythology. To start off with the green sheet, we're going to talk about the speech. This speech begins Thursday of this week, and with the speech on Thursday, itchy nose, sorry. And with the speech coming up on Thursday, let's go with, the giving of it will be similar to our last speech. It'll be between 1 minute and 2 minutes in length. You'll be standing up on the chair in front of the room. You'll have the timer going behind you. No ands, ums, and likes, or moving or wiggling while you're up there. The thing you're talking about this time is it's going to require a little bit of work ahead of time, because you are going to be telling a real story from Greek mythology. You're going to have to do research, look up a story from Greek mythology that we have not done yet, and tell it to us in your own words, much like we do with, or have I've been doing with standing up here and telling you guys the stories. You're going to do the same thing. You can't just make up a story. Don't come up here and just be like, one day Zeus was driving in his Ferrari and he saw a tornado and was like, oh no, my company's... No. You're going to have to actually look up something from Greek mythology and then just tell it in your own words. If you're trying to figure out where to get that information, there are websites on here you can use. You can go to my website, and I'll have links that you can use there. You can go type in your own. You can find books. The only stories that are off limits are going to be any story that we've already done. So if I've already told the story, you can't do that one because I've already done it. Or Dionysus, Hermes, and Aphrodite. We're going to get to how they get their thrones. You can do any other story about Dionysus, Hermes, Aphrodite. Actually, you can do any other story about any of the gods, as long as it's not how they got their throne or a story we've already done. I just don't want you to go home tonight and do research about how Dionysus got his throne and then show it tomorrow and be like, what? No, I just did. So I'm telling you, those will be stories that by the time Thursday happens, we'll have already covered that. At the bottom here, this little section is where you get to fill in, much like your note card before. This is the information you get to take up with you. 6 lines, 7 words per line. You'll copy this over to a new note card before you get to go up to speed. You can take it up there with you, stuff like that. Let's see, so there, that. I think that covers most of it. Questions, Sammy?
So if we just pause and don't say anything, will we lose points?
For the most part, no, unless you do it a whole bunch.
Okay, like if we forget something instead of saying like
No, absolutely not. That's fine. Now, if you just pause because you're trying to waste time, then that's where the issue comes in. Because as before, if it's less than a minute, I stop the timer. And then once you hit a minute, then that's fine with me.
Okay.
And you're good to go from there. Any other questions on that one? Hopefully you have written your name on this in the spot that says name, so I wouldn't have to yell at you. Hint, hint, so that you're good. Then you can put the green sheet away. Now back to dealing with gods who make poor choices.
Yay.
Yeah, I know. I'm excited too. Let's see. Go ahead and either turn the notebook face down or put your blue sheet on top of it so you can't see it. We're going to see how well the information has stayed in your brain, as we have from last week. We only have the first couple gods. We'll try to add a couple more today. The first god to get the throne on Mount Olympus is
Zeus!
Seem all excited on that. What do we say for Zeus?
God! King of all gods!
King of all gods, Mac Daddy God. And what hand sign do we do for him?
A point and...
Here you go. So holding your lightning bolt and the throwing of it. Who is the first god he gives a throne to?
Hera.
Hera. Why does she get it first?
She's the queen of all gods.
Nicely done. And what hand sign for her?
Crown.
There you go. Less moose, more crown on top. Let's see. Then the next one to get a throne?
Poseidon.
Poseidon. And let's see, he is?
God of water.
God of watery, oceany things. And what hand sign to do for him?
Swimming.
Done. I'm hoping some of you never get near water because you will drown so quickly. And then after Poseidon, the next one to get a throne is? Hades.
Yeah.
Why is Hades not listed?
He gave it up.
He gives it up because it's going to be way too much work for him. He's a little lazy and antisocial. So the next one to get a throne and keep it is?
Demeter.
That's where Demeter comes in. Nicely done. And she is?
God of agriculture.
Rains and harvest. And her dance we do is?
Lawnmower. And then
nice lawn mowing. And then after that, our next one to get a throne is? Nope. Hestia. And what is Hestia the god of?
Fire.
Fireplaces, not the god of fire. Fire. which is the god of fireplaces, but she's not listed. Why is she not listed? She'll give up her throne, which we'll get to here probably Wednesday or so. And so she is not currently up there. Then we have two more who get thrones because now Zeus has run out of brothers and sisters. So who does he decide gets the next thrones? Children. And who are the next two to get thrones? Hephaestus and then Ares, his brother, are the next two to get thrones. Now is where you can turn it back over because we're adding new information for you. So now we have Hephaestus and Ares are the next two to get thrones. And Hephaestus is the only god to be crippled because his father threw him because he got in the middle of an argument, and don't argue with Zeus because he threw him as hard as he could from the top of a mountain, and he ends up landing on an island. When he lands on the island, the whole leg scrunchity and the bones and the we didn't get to that part?
No.
All right, that's the part we got to then. So we get to the argument.
We got to him throwing him and then the bell rang.
And there we go. So he's thrown and he goes flying through the air, and as he goes flying through the air, he realizes that he's on top of a mountain and that the building he's in does not have walls. So he goes flying out there and goes I'm going to give you the speedy version. And he goes flying, little legs kicking, as he goes flying out over the world. And as he starts to land, he goes out over the ocean, still going. Ocean goes by, eventually sees an island. He tries to aim for the island, so the whole not drowning thing. And aims for the island, turns his body around so that he can land standing up, and realizes that was a poor choice. Because when he hits, all of that force goes into one leg. And that leg goes and spurty, and basically becomes a giant accordion. The accordion is little musical instruments. And so when he hits, the leg just kind of goes. Zeus is so upset with him because this whole, arguing with me and making me throw you from the top of a building, that Zeus refuses to let any other god come down and help him. Gods heal when they drink nectar and ambrosia. It's like God Gatorade. But Zeus won't let any god go down there and give it to him. So he does not heal correctly. He doesn't die, but he also can't heal like he's supposed to. And Zeus leaves him down there. Hephaestus grows up on this island. His leg eventually heals, but it heals all ziggy-zaggy like a Z. Whenever he walks around, it makes like that funny squeaky sound. And then bends down on that one side as he walks around. Spends years growing up on this island until he becomes somewhere in the teenager ages. And somewhere as a teenager, he's on the island until he starts exploring this giant mountain on the island. While he's exploring the mountain, he starts hearing thunder coming from inside the mountain, which is not where you normally expect thunder to come from, which intrigues him. So he keeps searching until he can find a cave that leads into a tunnel that leads down into the inside of this giant mountain. And inside, he finds a gigantic opening and three beings on the inside of it, banging away on a giant forge in the middle of the mountain. These three beings are the Cyclops. The Cyclops take pity on this young crippled boy, and because they don't care what Zeus has to say, because they're bigger and older than him, so they don't have to follow any of his directions, they bring Hephaestus in, and they begin to train him. And they train him in what they are the best at doing. And what are they the best at doing? Making weapons. So Hephaestus becomes an expert metalsmith, which is what? He is the god of. So he becomes the god of metalsmiths. And through this, he eventually manages to work his way back up to Mount Olympus by impressing Zeus, by creating a magic cursed bench, but it's a long story. And so he gets himself back up on Mount Olympus. So for him, Hephaestus, he becomes the blacksmith of the god, or the metalsmith of the gods. Zeus eventually forgives him, and Hephaestus goes, "It's not your job to forgive me. You crippled me for life." And Zeus is like, "It's okay, I forgive you." He's like, "You can't forgive me. I still hate you." Zeus is like, "Oh, I know. It's adorable." He's like, "I hate you." And kiss. But he's back up on Mount Olympus, and life is good. Well, the hand sign we'll do for him is the one that we pretty much see every time that we see Hephaestus, and he's doing the same thing. That's right, the tomahawk chop. Tomahawk chop. And so you're going to hammer something. And this was, once again, much like hoping you guys never go near water, I'm hoping many of you never pick up a hammer, because you will probably brain yourselves. Because I was watching you go, "Mr. Brovicast, I'm hammering." You just go straight down. What happened to our child? We gave her a hammer. Not a good sign. It's okay, we have other children. Alright, then Ares also gets a throne. And this is Zeus's other son. He has two daughters, Hebe and Eilithyia. Did we get a chance to talk about them?
Yeah.
Yes.
The fact that, what does Hebe become? Yeah, the maid of Mount Olympus, who's better than Olithia, who gets nothing at all. But Ares, much like a Kardashian, is just sort of born into all this fame and popularity. He's like, oh, I'm special! And he steps up there, and like a Kardashian, people hate him. And so Ares, we already know his job. What does he do?
God of war.
God of war. We have a second god of war. Who's our other god of war? Athena. Two different types of war. Once again, Ares was the jerk god of war. He was not a nice person, even as a god of war. At least with Athena, she was trying to be honorable. He didn't even bother that. His version of war is before you get into a fight, you take like a handful of sand, you throw it to your opponent's face, and they're like, you kick him in the jimmy, and then they fall on the ground, you jump on top of them, and you have a friend come in and hit him with a chair, and you're like, bah! And you run away. That's how Ares fights. So because of that, he was not well respected or well liked by the other gods. He oftentimes would take human form and come down to fight in wars down on Earth, or would just come down to Earth as a human to pick fights, would just go into random bars and just make fun of you. Hey, your mama wears combat boots. And they're like, I don't even know what combat boots are. But they'd go and beat him up. He would get beat up, go back up to Mount Olympus, beat up and in tears. And the other guy's like, what happened to you? He's like, I got beat up. Like, what god beat you up? Like, wasn't a god. It was a guy. They're like, you got beat up by a guy? Like, well, I made fun of his mom. Like, oh, goodness gracious. Oh, my Zeus. And so because of that, OMZ, because of that, stop, thank you. Because of that, the other gods did not get along with him whatsoever. And so for the hand sign that goes with him, instead of taking a normal fighting stance, I want you to remember that he was the wussy god of war. So I'm going to teach you how I was taught to fight when I was in junior high, because I was of the nerdish persuasion. And being as super intelligent that I was taught that you had to protect the moneymaker, which was the brain. And so what I was taught to do is anytime that the bully's coming at you, you need to take whatever is your dominant punching hand. If you're not sure which is your dominant punching hand, whichever one you turn the pages with in a book is your dominant page turning hand. And you want to take that one into a fist, and it goes across your throat to protect your throat. And then you take your other hand, which is the one you use to hold the book down, and that comes up to protect your face. And that leaves you one hand free from you come at someone. And so that would be our wuss fighter stance. And so as long as you have, so that you remember with Ares that even though he was a god of war, he was not a strong, tough god of war. He was the god of Kardashian war. And as much as you might laugh, it does work. Anytime that you do have a bully that were to come at you, I guarantee when they're like, hey, you're like, wait, hang on, I gotta get ready. Like, what? And you go, hang on, watch. Then they fall over laughing. It gives you critical seconds to run and flee. Back up.
You should do that at Run Club and watch what everyone thinks.
I can guarantee you I won 100% of the fights I did not get into. And so that takes care of Ares. Our next two are going to be Artemis and Apollo. The problem is now, Zeus has filled up... At this point, before Artemis and Apollo, how many thrones has Zeus filled in?
6.
No.
8.
No.
9.
I just like...
Any random
Good job.
number.
7. Why has he filled in 7?
Because Hestia still has
Good job. Those 6 plus Hestia still has a throne. So he's filled in 7 thrones. How many does he have left to fill in?
5.
So excited to watch you guys with I Step tomorrow. Be good, I Step. 1 plus 1 equals cat. So it's going to be good stuff. So at this time, he's now filled in 7 thrones. He decides it's time to fill it in with more children. But he's done having children with Mrs. Zeus. So he decides it's time to fill in children that he has with other people. But the problem is, women have learned that whenever he's friendly, Hera tends to torture them horribly. So because of that, most women say no whenever Zeus shows up and attempts friendship. And so one particular girl by the name of Leto, L-E-T-O, a Titan girl, is out one day when Zeus approaches her and does the whole, his classic pickup line, how you doing, baby? I'm Zeus. To which she goes, ee, and runs from him. He's like, well, that didn't work. So he does what any respectable guy would do. He stalks her. And so he pulls on full creeper hand, and just goes and creeps along behind her and follows her until one day he finds her out swimming at like a lake or a pond, something like that. And he watches her from behind a tree, as you do when you're stalking someone. This happened to all of us. And as he's out watching her and she's swimming around, watches as she keeps trying to play with this bunch of swans. I don't know what you call it, a bunch of swans, a flock of swans, a pond of swans. Whatever.
Dead bird.
And so dead bird of swans is weird. And so you have these swans that are out there in the pond, and she keeps going like, come here, swans, come play with me. And the swan's like, swan, and whatever swans. And he kept flying away. So Leto says, oh, I wish I had a swan to come over here and play with me. That'd be awesome. To which Zeus goes, boing, and a little light bulb goes on above his head. So Zeus does the magic swan form and turns into a gigantic swan. Goes out onto the little pond, doing this little swan, 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 and swans across the lake. Just made it a verb. Swans across the lake to her, to which she's like, hey, you're a big swan. He's like, swan. She goes, you want to come over here and play? He said, swan. Whatever swans say. And they go over there and she plays with him. I don't know. Throws a fish and he fetches it or something like that. It's a weird part of the story. So she plays with the swan for a little bit until eventually she ends up riding on his back, because that's what you do with giant swans. And he's like riding along on the pond. He's like, woo! Swinging a cowboy hat around, because they all wore cowboy hats back then. And as they're going around, eventually she's riding on the back of the swan, and she's like, oh, swan, I love you. You're the greatest ever. I wish you were a titan, because then we could be married and be together forever. It's too bad you're just a swan. To which the swan goes, swan? And turns back from the swan into Zeus. And then she lands in his arms. Right there. And he goes, hey, baby, I'm Zeus. And she goes, oh, Zeus. And they're friendly. So at this point, friendliness has occurred, and she gets pregnant, because that's what happens with friends. And so once she's become pregnant, Hera finds out, because that's what Hera does. And Hera is none too pleased about this whole being with her man thing. So Hera comes down and confronts Leto, and she's like, I see that you're pregnant. Leto's like, it's not my fault. She's like, you were with my man. And Leto's like, no, it's not my fault. He was a swan. Hera's like, it makes it more creepy, dear. Don't tell people that. And she goes, all right, here's the problem. Because you were with my man, and my man is the king of everything you see, as long as you're in his kingdom, you can't stop running. And Leto goes, you can't make me run. And Hera goes, I can. And she goes, how are you going to do that? Hera goes, oh, with one of these. And a gigantic snake comes shooting up out of the ground, bigger than any titan. And lands on the ground. The whole ground shakes around her. To which Leto goes, ee! And takes off running. And the snake goes, snake, whatever snakes say, snake, and takes off after her, just going snaky, 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 and starts chasing her. Being a titan, she doesn't have to be worried about being slowed down by things like using the restroom, or eating, or sleeping. So she just keeps on running for days on end, and then weeks on end, and then months on end, and then years on end. She continues to run and run and run. The problem was, she was pregnant. So as she continues to run without stopping, she can't stop to have a baby. So she gets pregnanter and pregnanter and pregnanter. And it starts off with just a little belly that goes like wooka, 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 and then becomes a bigger belly that goes wooka, wooka, wooka. And eventually as she's running and the years go by, it's like wooka, wooka. And tomorrow we'll pick up what happens with running pregnant women.
Never mind.
Logic.